right, we got the chat starting to come in. What's up, people? Be with you in just 1 second. Doing some final setup on these things. Thanks, Karen. Remember, hitting the like early helps us with the algorithm, lets people know we're live, which is the greatest way to annoy a maggot right now, currently. All right, I'm going to jump right in, and we will start the show. Hi, everybody. Real quick, before I bring in the major bit of news, been following the LA fires all night, obviously, and it's a devastating situation there, spreading across many different places. And just as a point of just a heads up to everybody, Caleb, our guitar player in Nerd Halen, lost his home last night. His the building where his condo was, where his apartment was, burned down, and they fled with everything they could take with them. And his father, who lives also up in the Palisades in his childhood home, in Caleb's childhood home, is safe with his brother in another part of the city now, but the house burned down as well. And I mean, and like, not only were there childhood memories in that home, but also like the urn with his mother's ashes and all kinds of stuff. Like, it's devastating for him. So if you could send him some love, for those of you that follow him on there, that would be really welcome, until we can figure out a way where we can all help. I'm obviously staying out of everyone's way until such time as they're clear to make arrangements for the next phase of whatever happens, rebuilding or moving or any of those kind of things. I'm going to be there to help him. And so just letting everybody know that that's, it's hitting close to home this time around. And it's just a rough one for him. So I just want to send him some love, and I want you guys to as well, if that's cool. All right. That said, let me bring in the major, because we have a lot to cover this morning, and not the least of which is, hey, Major, welcome to the show. Glad to have you with us.
Always glad to be here, brother.
So I got to tell you, parts of watching the news like make me feel, when they show like the first responders and the fire department and the LAPD and water and power and all these people coming out, and they're just giving the read, man. They're coming out and they're saying detail after detail. Look, if you're gonna get out, go east. Follow any instructions that when somebody tells you to get out of there. If you're in this warning zone, we know you sort of bug out directions and all that stuff, and they keep that pretty tight, right? And then they say there's a website to go to. All the internet is still up. Like, people are able to reach the web and get instruction that way, which is something when shit like this happened half a century ago, was just an impossibility. You didn't know, you didn't hear. You could check with the news at 6 o'clock that night once you got where you were going, but you were just basically asking your neighbors where the hell to go. So people died all the time in these situations. Now we have all these resources, and to see them well coordinated, where they're like, do this, don't do this, go here, stick to this, watch for get ready if you're in an evacuation zone. You might have to go really quickly. The winds could shift. It's really smart to watch that. And then to watch some like relatively self-aggrandizing politicians try to give like their MLK Day speech about, these aren't just houses, these are homes and this stuff. Like, look, we get it. Say that after. Wait till everybody's out and then give your big, I know you're losing your home. That it's almost like worse. If you do that now, people need to get the fuck out. They need to think family over building. They don't need to go, it's our home, and slow their roll at all. You know what I mean? And to me, it's almost like unprincipled to be too emotive in those situations and too attached to these circumstances. You got your fingers and your toes, and your kids and your animals are secure, and you got, a little bag of your most important documents. Get the fuck out. The rest of it is replaceable. And just this feeling of like, they show people like standing on their fucking lawn watching the house go up in flames, and the shit's licking around them to the side, and you're like, just go. So I find it very frustrating. And that difference between the serious and the critical, right? You've been in situations that were serious. I think I would argue that as American citizens, we're in one right now, right? Trump and all of his bullshit, it's a serious situation. There are critical elements of it, but to be in emergency mode or panic around it is the wrong energy for the wrong time. It puts you in fight or flight. When, this is not bug the fuck out time, right? And you've been in situations, I'm certain, in your military career where it was bug the fuck out time. Like,
Yeah. I was almost captured by 60 Taliban fighters one time.
Right. Yeah. So maybe you can speak to that in terms of, the politics of the day and the difference between, because this is a good example of like, that is what an emergency is like.
Yeah, it's not the time to get your thoughts and prayers moment. There's a lot of stuff that has to take. I think most people in America don't understand when we say wildfires in California. Most people in the United States of America have no concept of what this is like.
Right.
When a house catches on fire and the neighboring house all of a sudden starts getting hot and it catches on fire, that's what most people in America are used to seeing. They're not used to seeing the kind of fires that they have in California, where, a lot of people don't know, when I go out to California, I, especially the first time I went out there, I was actually shocked because, I was thinking that I was going to see these green lawns and all that, and it was going to be nice, beautiful land everywhere. Areas in Beverly Hills, you have nice green lawns and stuff like that. But right outside their properties, it is just dry. I feel like it's like just this dry
it's like
type
kindling.
Of weed.
Yeah.
And it's kindling. That's what it is. And when you have a fire and then you have the winds that you have there, on the West Coast, it spreads. It's almost at the point where when they say you have to go, you have to go.
Yes.
I mean, they didn't have time to go pick through their properties and grab what they could. They had to get and go.
That's right.
And a lot of people don't understand that. And I'll tell you, if you can, because you have a person that messaged me all the time to set up me coming on your show. If you guys do decide to start like a GoFundMe or something for him, please let me know. I will absolutely contribute.
I will. Thank you. Because I know we are going to have to, because bless his heart, Caleb's dream is Nerd Hale, and he built this whole thing himself, and I'm just happy to be along for the ride. But he works at a restaurant the rest of the time to pay his bills. He's got a neurodiverse kid, and he can't fuck around with anything where he won't have health insurance, right? So, this is to watch somebody ice skate uphill for their dream all the time like he does is really inspiring, and for something to hit him like this is really disheartening. So it's just I'll address that in future. But again, to anybody who's in any of these kind of situations, I think the responsible political thing to do is to be as direct and as informative and as calculated as you possibly can be. If there's a politician out there that's like, oh shit, we have tornadoes, we have hurricane warnings, we have flood possibilities, don't tell us the story during the rebuild. And here's the other thing: be like Jimmy Carter, be there for the rebuild. Then be out there driving nails. Then tell me the story about these were homes, right? That's when you do that. Nobody has any fucking time for this, our hearts and fifis go out to the people of this area, because these aren't just structures, these are homes, and people have lived in these homes and their memories and blah, blah, blah. Lady, if my house is on fire, which road should I get on to drive out of here? Sir, shut up about that and tell me which freeway is open.
And what you just said, that's really, really spot on, because if anybody has ever seen the footage of these wildfires on the West Coast. I mean, we're not talking about house to house. We're talking about entire neighborhoods become engulfed in flames in literally seconds.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's so dry. And that's what I say, you know, when you see the green grass, that's grass that was sod that they put in place and they watered it. But as soon as you get off their property, it's like scrub grass.
Yeah, that's right. It's what makes tumbleweed. It's that same kind of curly plant that gets up like that. And by the way, that's because the trees that are indigenous to the area, the entire area, fire is natural to it. It almost serves a purpose that these plants cook and release their seeds. There's certain like plants that, you know, they don't germinate until they've been through a fire, shit like that. Like nature knows what it's doing. And by the way, this will be followed by rain. We will end a drought season. Like I've been through this so many times in Los Angeles. There's no mystery to it. This is how it works. It's like, oh, dear God, now the mudslides. No, that's how nature does this particular area. It dries it out, it burns it, then it floods it, and then the top layer comes off. It's like exfoliating on a global scale. It takes and then the chunks of it fall into the ocean because of the tectonic plate. And all the plants and trees and animals that are in that area have adapted over millennia and, for millions of years in some cases to follow that path, to thrive in that path. That's why there's, even after all these fires, there's still more of that scrub grass. Right? Yeah. There's no regular grass. Right. But that scrub grass comes back. That's because it's all part of this. So, like I know in Kentucky and certainly in West Virginia, tornadoes are one of the big things that, they have through there. And, they, like wildfires, can turn. They can turn on a dime. And there are a bunch of people who get killed all the time because they're like, I'm safe over here. It's going that way. And then because it's wind, yep. And it can turn and come right at you, and it's so
that's true. Yeah. Let me tell you something. When I was growing up, and it's kind of crazy, but when I was growing up, we would have these forest fires all the time, and it was kind of like as soon as they happened, everybody just ran up into the mountains and started trying to, make these breaks. I mean, even us as kids, which I'm sure that my parents wouldn't have approved, but we would be up there as well too. I mean, everybody like participated in this because, when the wind blows and this stuff, it does absolutely affect people's homes. And when you live in hollers, it could take a lot of houses.
Yeah. And here's what I would say. The reason I want to bring this up, obviously, because it's ongoing right now. There are people who still are under evacuation order in several areas around Los Angeles. And the scrub grass blows this stuff around. And there's a shit ton of arson that happens in these situations. By the second fire, maybe something jumped. By the third one, some asshole is setting a fire. They also have an issue with LA and like a myriad of other issues because it's a highly densely populated area, that it's not all organic is all I'm going to say. The fires that occur are not all organic. In some cases they are. They were like transformers blowing in the wind, but the fueling of the fire by the wind, which is extraordinary, it's like 75 to 100 miles an hour in some places, is, it is like a bellows. And so here's what I would say to everybody in these situations. First of all, check yourself when you're like, I don't trust the government. Anytime people always we talk in these abstract terms. I guarantee that even Trump voters in LA County, the same people who went to the Diddy parties, are following evacuation orders, are getting the fuck out. Right. So it's always a lie. It's always whenever I hear people talk about their fellow Americans, they're like, well, this country is full of stupid people. They're like dangerously stupid where we go. And like, how'd you drive where we are right now? How'd you get here? You drove on a road and the only thing separating you from a bunch of anonymous human beings was a yellow line you both agree on. So of course you trust them. Whether that's advisable or not, we can have a conversation about, but you absolutely do. And in this case, when it defaults, when things get really serious, you want and need to count on your government officials to be capable. And the problem that I don't think we get through to the other side and to maybe some of our own lazier voters is how serious and important competence is in emerging situations like this. I don't need ego. I don't need people, making more of themselves in this situation. I need people who are aware of these things and have planned ahead for them, right? Yeah. And Trump and his people just have no way of processing that need for competence. They're so busy with this self-aggrandizing horseshit that they do all the time that none of them that I think it builds that distrust. And then when people need to have that trust, when they need to know, okay, they're telling me where to go. They're not telling me to go right into the oncoming fire, right? I need to know I'm going to the right place. That's really fucking scary, right? And not because you're a QAnon and you've been an asshole, but because you don't honestly know if your government knows what it's doing.
Well, you're absolutely right. And once again, I think the people that live in that area know, how dangerous this stuff is, and they need to get the information that they need to get as soon as possible, and it doesn't need to be muddled up by a bunch of people trying to get there. I checked the block by telling everybody, my story.
Right, especially, and like I said, there are great times to do that. A good politician, let me tell you a little advice for politicians out there. The first thing you say is, look, I know this is devastating for everybody, but here's the details you need to do to be safe. And as soon as you're safe, I don't need you to find a place close by to stay. If anything, if you're in the area around these fires, fuck off. Come to Vegas, go to fucking Irvine, get an Airbnb in San Diego. Don't do anything, don't just, as soon as you get clear, drop your shit and wait to see what happens. If you have the means and the wherewithal at all, now is the time. They'll reimburse people for the money they need to spend to stay and all that kind of stuff. And if you've got a family and animals and all that kind of stuff, go further than you think you need to, because you and your traffic and your car and your needs and you going to the store over the next 10 days will be out of everyone else's way. Get out. And again, don't just drop because you're close, because if you just move from evacuation area to evacuation area, that doesn't really help you or anybody else. So to me, that's what a politician who in this situation should say primarily. Then the other thing is they should go, if it's their district, here's where the evacuation areas are. If you're in these areas, fire crews are making sure that they're building a fire break against that to keep it from coming. But if you have to get out, these roads are open, these roads are closed. If there's no school, the parks are closed, don't worry about any of that shit. Your boss will understand. Get out.
Yep. It's all about information.
Right.
All about information, giving people the right
quality details that will save lives.
Yep. Right.
And get out, and then get out of the way. That's the key. And I feel like there used to be a time when you'd rely on the news or phone trees. Remember, when there'd be a phone tree in your neighborhood, oh shit, it's coming. And we would, in Kentucky, we did that. There would be a phone tree if there was a tornado, to everybody go to the church or go to the elementary school. That would be where you would hide, or just shelter at home because it's coming through that area, right? And so everybody would be calling each other, and then the phones would go dead, and you're like, ugh. And then you'd have to wait for the news, or you'd listen to the radio. You turn the radio on and try to get a signal, right? Now we have social media and other stuff, which has been useful in some areas, but can also be gucked up with all kinds of shit. So I would say take this as an example of find a trusted source for these kind of situations. National Weather Service, no bullshit kind of stuff like that. The police department, fire department, follow those on your social media. And anytime they're there, put them in a list if you're on Blue Sky or something, and that you can go check anytime shit goes down. You don't have to hear from them all the time, but have a trending report, and don't go to anybody outside of that, because it could cost you your life, because people don't care. They're mucking about in this. They're saying that they don't have enough water to fight the fires, and therefore blah blah blah. And so they're just scaring people and trying to be anti-government assholes. So get out of the way, and find trusted sources that are as close to the material source and details that you possibly can have. And then if you want to have poetic, prosaic conversations about these are, we as a community are coming together in a time of crisis, blah, 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 do that after, when you're fucking hammering nails into boards and building people's houses again. But until then, nobody needs to hear it.
And you're also going to start to weather the people that are going to say, well, if you don't like it, just move. Well, then do we say that to everybody that's in the Midwest and tell them if you don't like tornadoes, then move?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, at the end of the day, these are people. This is where they're from. This is what they know. And, it's one of those things. I mean, not everybody has lost their homes, but, wildfires in the West Coast are a serious thing. That is something that, it's tough.
They are
but
natural.
It does cause.
They are natural to the area as much as a volcanic eruption is. Mm-hmm. They can be exacerbated by human beings, and I don't mean climate, I mean actual arson. They often are, but once they pick up, the reason they spread so much, like a lightning strike will do it, or a down power line, or some asshole setting the fire in their little weird, Manson encampment in the fucking woods that they have, doesn't matter. It's so natural to the environment. However it starts doesn't matter. It will just blow up.
And also, like where I'm at right now in North Carolina, especially like on Fort Liberty, they do controlled burns. They do controlled burns every year. They do controlled burns. You can't do controlled burns out there in West Coast.
Right.
Because if the wind picks it up, it's out of control. It'll go from a small little fire to completely out of control in seconds. Because of the wind on the West Coast, you can't do it like that.
Here's what I suggest, California. If you want to do a major public works thing, those tank barricade things that look like jacks with the giant ones that they use as breakwaters in the sea around Greece and other places to stop erosion.
Tetrahedrons.
Yes, exactly. Take those and place them all throughout these areas where we know there are rushes in both directions, because you will create these veins where once it hits, it won't hit as much. And you can put sprinkler systems in them to blow like a wall of mist up to stop embers up the top of it within, say 12 feet or something like that. And if you need to, you can turn the pressure up really high and wet the area as something's coming. So you turn it low when it's coming, and if the fire actually makes it to that area, then you miss the entire area as a break between different neighborhoods, and you just split these areas because it's going to happen again. This is not, and this pal nobody now says look at how the firefighter. No, I'm not fighting the fire. I'm strategically stopping the pattern that is affected by the weather there. That's the issue more than anything else. If you know it's coming back, we build dams for that very reason. The LA River exists for the very factor that LA would be a flood basin. Compton, one of the reasons why the area of Compton and all that is, why would that place in the LA area, which is just as close to downtown or central Los Angeles as Beverly Hills is, and arguably has a little arc up before it goes near El Segundo of a little mountainside there, why would that be less valuable, and sort of the impoverished area versus this area? And north and south doesn't quite cover it. Why would that be? I'll tell you why. Because it's lower. It's a floodplain. And before they built the reservoir that drained some of the water that does exist out of there, the land was, because it was lower, that's where the flooding happened. Anytime there was flooding in the Los Angeles basin, that's where it went. Compton, from Gage to fucking El Segundo, Hawthorne, all that was, would be underwater. And so that's where poor people lived. That's right, because the rich people weren't going to spend a bunch of money on a nice house in a place they knew that flooded every 8 fucking years, right? So they built the reservoir and that went away, but that stuck. That kind of consistency in the economics of it stuck, because if the reservoir dam ever blows, that's what's going to happen. Compton's fucked. It just is. And so same thing with these fires. It's going to happen again. There are mitigations you can, and you're absolutely right. You can't broom out all the plants because they're indigenous to the area. They dry naturally because that's how they go. And people are going to continue to live there. So you have to do other things as mitigating factors. You got to have trenching and you got to have barriers. That's it.
And never underestimate the sprinkler system.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we actually have our sprinkler system where I live. It completely surrounds our home.
Yes.
And we actually thought of that because where I live, pine straw, lots of pine straw constantly. And when that stuff catches, it burns. So we absolutely made sure that we surrounded our house with sprinkler systems. And we actually have a 3-acre pond, which is where we get our water for our sprinklers. So, if we ever had a fire come close to us, we would just crank everything up and let it go until the fire passes.
Right.
But we don't have the fires that they have out there in California. We don't have that wind.
And anybody who's questioning this also, as far as how serious this is, just go look at any of the video online. The whipping winds, it's like a bellows. It is so intense. And so, you can...
There's so many videos of people that were literally almost killed in these fires where they get in their cars and they're driving through an inferno. Both sides of the roads are engulfed in flames. I mean, people, this is the reality for people out there in California. And it's very, very, very dangerous. And that's why, I want to make sure everybody knows that's why you're talking about this. Because, we don't need politicians to get out there and start grandstanding right now. Right now, the only thing that needs to be put out is the information that these people need to be able to find safety, to be able to take care of themselves, and to be able to survive this. So that's right.
And I understand the need to talk like this, but I'm telling you, these politicians need to pick your battles. Do you want to be the most effective politician? You be a public representative for public safety in a public safety crisis. Period. End of story. I think you could argue that during COVID, people tried. I think you had scientists trying to be as cut and dry about it as possible. And what killed ultimately a lot of maggot response to it was all the narrative around it. They're building this story. They're telling, the government wants to do this. And there's this thought that it turned it into this rolling story when in reality, it was just a public health threat. You need certain details. You can take them or leave them to the extent that you want to survive it, or you have your own trust issues. But that's pretty much all that matters. All the rest is just fucking noise. It might as well be the crackle of fire. So, to me, maybe at some point they're going to learn this lesson. And I think it will be, this would be my message to Democrats in this situation. Be effective in these situations more than emotionally connected. Period. Absolutely. Be as as almost regimented as you possibly can be. There's this, there's obviously a bunch to talk about because Trump has been flooding the news cycle with all this bullshit about Greenland and fucking
the Gulf of Dumbfuckistan.
Right. Yeah, the Gulf of, and here's the funny part. I was like, somebody should put a bill up to call it the Gulf of the Americas. So it's like North, Central, and South America, just to drive him nuts. And to see if he would sign it just because he's too fucking stupid.
Let me tell you, what I see here, and this is what gets me. Donald Trump campaigned, told all these promises. Now he's going back on all of these promises. So now what he's trying to do is, I guess, try to act like, I'm going to change the name of the Gulf of Mexico and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
This is no different. When I was a senator in West Virginia, every year we had at least one friggin' politician in West Virginia that would say, I'm going to try to make the Bible the state book.
Right.
Who gives a shit? Ain't nobody going to read it. You know, I mean, literally, this is the kind of Donald Trump is that guy. Yeah. I got to do something that lets people think that I'm out there getting shit done. You're not lowering grocery prices. You're not lowering gas prices. You are shitting on our allies who have stood with us since World War II. You're trying to pick fights with Panama and Greenland. And, at the end of the day, how about you follow through with the promises that you made when you ran for office? and it absolutely sickens me that we are where we are,
Yeah.
And I tell you, I actually messaged. I was talking to Ben Mycelis yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
We were messaging back and forth, and I was like, "Why is it the 14th Amendment, Section 3 lays it out verbatim?" He's an insurrectionist, and he actually wrote me back and said, "Hey, man," he said, "the moment that the Supreme Court said that he was immune when he was the president, that's why. That's the reason why." This guy's getting away with this garbage. It's
well, and also, I talked about this with Tara on Monday, but the genuine reason is he was tried on. He's been found guilty on state charges, but not on federal charges. And if there had been, if we hadn't had Merrick Garland slow walk this, if he'd have been found guilty early last year, most Republicans, and I think especially the ones that want to broom him the most, would have gotten rid of him. They would have used it. They would have said, "Yeah, he can't even run," because it was a federal charge from the federal government. But because it was a state charge, it would open too many doors to any state now could just file a low-level federal charge against anybody they think will run for office or is running for office, and just kangaroo court, find them guilty. It's on the books, and now they can't run. And Alabama, Louisiana, fucking Oklahoma, Arkansas, whoever the fuck is running these states would go, see that black lady who might run for president one day? Let's file some, violation of our Communications Act. We'll pass a law about, promoting abortion. And any politician of a certain level that promotes abortion in our state, and they don't have to physically be here, they can just do it on fucking Twitter, right? Is violating our, a federal violation of life law, whatever. And they could just, is one of those laws they could have on the books just in case of emergency, break glass, and just guarantee that people can't run. If you're going to go by the letter, it has to be a federal court, has to be a federal violation, has to be a federal felony. Or it doesn't matter. Or any state could just scuttle anyone's future political. They could put a glass ceiling on anybody they think is a threat. Gavin Newsom, Whitmer, I don't know, just any governor, any lieutenant governor that they look at as being potentially a president, they could just scuttle it. Guaranteed. Because once you set that standard, you have to keep to that standard. If he's found guilty of a felony in New York State, and that's enough to keep him from running for president of the United States, then any state can do it. That becomes the baseline.
I've just been hoping that there's going to be something, and it's not. It's not. He's going to become the president. He's going to take power, and for the next 4 years, he's going to screw shit up. He's going to blame people for things that he's the reason for. But once again, and I hate this because every election is the most important election of our lives. And I'm telling you, we have to take back 2026.
Yep.
We have to.
Yeah.
And the only positive thing is that Donald Trump is back in power. For us, that's the positive thing.
Right.
I hate it, but the truth is this guy is going to do some absolute bullshit.
Yeah. Maggots are already mad. They're already mad.
Yeah. But let's, and I'm gonna say this too. You know what? I have to say it because I want to hear your thoughts. Have you realized that Elon Musk has been in the news for the past 10 years, 5 years? Everybody knows who Elon Musk is. You never, ever, ever saw him with his children, ever, until that CEO got shot. And now everywhere he goes, he's got a child on his shoulders or in his arms. I'm telling you right now, that sack of shit is using his children as shields. I'm serious. You never saw him. The only video I ever saw of him with his son was when his son was trying to get some affection, and he was pushing his son, like hand on face, pushing him out of the way, because Elon was playing a video game. Yeah. Father of the year, folks. But now all of a sudden, he's got that child on his shoulders. Ain't nobody going to shoot me. I'm serious. I really believe he is using his children as friggin' human shields, man. And and that's the type of person this guy is.
I will say this to that end. There is a strain of MAGA that and it's an odd mix of hyper-Christian, quiverful, Christian nationalist folks that believe that you got to make a bunch of babies and you got to make a bunch of white Christian babies because we're being outbred by Africans and Muslims, which demographically is materially true. White people are a minority on the planet, but that it's kind of always been relatively true if you bother to count the whole planet, right? We were never a minority where we were, and we never counted anywhere that wasn't anywhere else. And just like people in Africa and the Middle East were like, what the fuck is with your face when white people show up? So it's not that weird. People are people. But he has been pushing this sort of Darwinist genetic idea for a long time about make more babies, and this whole thing about Trump saying smart, fast racehorses produce fast racehorses, which clearly, if that's true, then Trump is not a fast racehorse because Eric and Don are dumb as fuck. And so I don't even if he said that around his own kids, people would laugh to his face. That said, Elon clearly believes that. And what he's trying to appeal to is that Darwinist Christian nationalist crossover that exists, the eugenics crowd that exists within these like hyper billionaires who think they're going to be on fucking Elysium floating on the, outside the earth using other people for slave labor until they can pare down all the things that Alex Jones says about the rich elites and that kind of stuff, that they want to get rid of most of the people on the planet. There are too many people here at all, and they want to just only breed people with good genes, and everybody else has got to go, and and that they would poison people to do it or slow walk emergency services do it. All that is true of Elon Musk. All that is true of Donald Trump. They've openly said so. I mean, you can look at Trump's response in COVID to certain states that you can tell he believes are full of black people, where he's like, all right, if we just slow walk this a little bit, it's kind of their ass for living where they live, and if they don't know how to save themselves, maybe they're not worth saving. There's a lot of that going around in those circles. And his whole holding his babies up and his kids now is an attempt to make, to push this kind of like good genes concept. He had one sit down with Trump, and Trump started at his rally in August, I think it was. And after that, Trump started talking this genetic shit from that point on openly. Just saying, good genes. He's always believed it, of course, because he's always been a racist. But he's a genetic racist. He believes in superior whites and all that shit, right? For real.
Yeah, Trump. Oh, you're right. But I mean, it's like, Trump, that guy right people. There. I'll tell you right now, nobody would ever pick Donald Trump first for their team.
No, hold on 1 second. I apologize if I got that's Phil's name underneath. Yeah, I'll fix that in just 1 second. But if I may, there you go. Boink. There you go. Is that this is a picture of Trump recently? Okay, and this is from. There's been a couple of these stories. Sorry about I don't have the nut warning sticker, everybody, but Jesus Christ, this business is filth. But that said, I would like to remind everybody that Donald Trump is old as shit. And let me show you why this picture is people are focusing on it. See his right hand?
Yeah.
This is a close-up of it. It's nasty. Now, when Biden had a similar bruise on his hand from an IV, more than likely, or at least like intravenous treatment, or they were taking blood or something like that. Biden had a much smaller bruise on his hand. And it was news for weeks.
Yeah, of course. That's how they are. It's if it's the other side, it's everybody's screaming, yell about it. But if it's their side, it's say keep it quiet. I mean, When Nancy Pelosi fell down, oh my gosh, she needs to be removed. She can barely walk. And then you got that other jackaloon that just recently fell down some stairs, and nobody says a thing.
Right.
That's how these people are.
So this
look. Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you know. And I haven't said I'm definitely going to be doing some stuff in 2026. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you, I think that we need to bring back the fairness doctrine. There's two major things right now that I've been thinking about. And number one is bringing back the fairness doctrine. And the thing is why have we not done this? Why have we waited 50 years to bring back something that says we want to have honesty and integrity in our news media? If you are a news entity and you are spewing lies, then you should be shut down. And that's what we need. We need to bring back the fairness doctrine, and we need to absolutely remove the cap on Social Security so that people like Elon Musk and the rest of these billionaires that act like they give a shit about this country, you can start by paying into Social Security with every damn dollar that you make. It ain't going to break you, but it will absolutely guarantee that our grandkids will have it when it's ready. So, I mean, those are two things, without a doubt, that we need to start pushing.
Here's what I want to show you guys, by the way. This is, let me see if I can put these side to side so you can see it. Where's this one, Dirk? Yeah. Yeah. So let me show you. This is, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you case set match. This is from this Biden when he had his, there was a state event that they just did. And this is the mysterious purple mark on his hand that they covered. That's it. That's the whole thing. It's that right there. That thing that any of us could get banging our hand on a chair, right?
Yeah.
That whole thing right there. This is Trump's. Biden's, Trump's. Now, I got to say, we've seen Biden with a mark on his right hand before. This is his left hand. On his right hand before, on the back of it, where it looks like he got, they use the vein that's on the back of your hand to do stuff, which they do all the time. Old people, especially, will bruise around the site where they give you an injection. But that ain't shit. That little one right there, that's ridiculous. This is absurd. That he's bruising that much, that he got a hematoma basically of that size. And this is the news. This is not news. This is news. This is not news. That's the part that I want. And this is where the fairness doctrine conversation absolutely matters. Right.
Yeah. And that's the thing though, is that it also shows how the Democrats just, refuse to actually stand up and fight fire with fire. What the Democrats should be doing right now is running what you just did and said, oh, everybody remember when everybody said, oh, Joe Biden's too old and look at his bruise on his hand. Anybody out there that goes to the hospital where they run a damn IV through your damn fist, you're going to have a mark when they pull it out. That's a fact. Mm-hmm. But once again, Donald Trump, his entire fist is engulfed in this hematoma. That's the kind of stuff. The Democrats, look, I don't turn the other cheek. If you hit me, I'm going to go after your freaking throat. I'm sorry, but that's just the way I roll. I'm so sick and tired of weak Democrats. Mm-hmm. I'm so sick and tired of Democrats. Well, look, I don't mind taking the high road when it comes to certain things. But when it comes to the way these people act, we have to be willing to get in there and fight fire with fire. We need people that aren't going to sit there and bow down to these assholes. I'm going to tell you this too. You watch these people, and I've seen this, and where you have a Republican ripping a Democrat a new ass, or a Democrat ripping a Republican a new ass, and as soon as the cameras go off, well, they're sitting in the back eating lunch together. Mm-hmm. I don't play that bullshit, and I think we need to stop allowing people that do. Either stand up for the Democrats or friggin' go someplace else.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, so I agree. You're not going to see Crockett having lunch with MTG anytime soon, right? And there may be other people there that they have a fiery exchange over a particular issue because they have genuine disagreements, but they can find some level of comity later. I don't have a problem with that because you do have to get along. And I have an issue with the phrase fighter when used in context with politics a lot of times because that's not what they're there to do. I have never seen a heavyweight bout where they go, okay, touch gloves and come out legislating. You know what I mean? Like whoops, I lost you for a second. Hopefully you'll pop. There you go. There is a distinct difference between fighting with someone and fighting for something. And they don't have to be mutually exclusive. But my thing is that I think a lot of times for the sort of gladiator sport aspect of it, this is ironically what I guess Jon Stewart was kind of talking about with Crossfire back in the day, is that just, a lot of people want that fight to look like the same fight they're seeing from the other side. This person's loud, uses epithets, is gross, So we need to be equally loud and use epithets and gross back then. I would rather see a little bit of checkmate from our side, because we don't have to play in their sandbox. We can drag them to ours. And there's an element of, and I think you can see this when some people do what I would call sarcastic comedy in the House. You know, the gentle lady with the whatever big bad butch body from Georgia just stated so eloquently, you know, that kind of stuff works wonders and is way more undercutting than what the fuck are you talking about? You know, shut that down, Mr. Chairman. I want their stuff because these people are against America. Like, that's how the Republicans talk. I think we can do it better. That said, and you know this, tactically, is the best fight always just reciprocal to whatever they're doing? In a physical fight, in a firefight, you know, they're shooting artillery, we should shoot artillery. They're shooting bullets, we should shoot bullets. Like, I've never seen that be the case. You know what I mean? In a real fight, in a physical fight. And so the analogy breaks down for me. The way you fight for it, it seems to me, is through braggadocious competence. So Trump and his crowd brag. That's one of the things that we can take from them, is they brag about shit they didn't do. And Democrats need to start bragging about stuff they did do, about the stuff they are doing. And don't worry about the activists and slacktivist bullshitters who are like, you know, oh, sure, we've solved poverty now. Is that what you're saying? Because we lowered childhood poverty a third? You think that's enough? You're like, motherfucker, we're not saying enough. Look, this is what we did. If we keep going, we're going to solve this. But we have a slacktivist class on our side that comes for people who brag about the ACA. Yeah, like the Medicare for all people are so against the ACA because it isn't that they would attack it more than Republicans did. More of the dents in its reputation came from those attacks that are coming from inside the House than from Republicans who don't want any of it. They don't want the ACA in its weakest form. They don't want a public option, and they sure as fuck don't want Medicare for all, right? And you don't get to Medicare for all until you go through a public option, unless you have a war that devastates your entire country. That's how England got it. England got it because they were literally bombed to shit. They started from scratch, and they needed a national health service. It was an emergency provision. The emergency lasted 50 years, 60 years.
Yeah, you know, my biggest thing is also on the Republican side, where, like, they all know that Marge the Trainwreck Green is garbage.
Yep.
But, you know, they will not, you know, behind the scenes, I guarantee you they're all talking about what a shit stain she is. But, you know, they will absolutely allow her to spew the garbage that she spews. And, you know, my thought is, you know, why can't we have people willing to stand up and on their side and say, that's not how it is. That's not how it is. Marge, you're wrong. You know, before you go on here and start screaming all this garbage, you know, don't. I mean, I wish that we could have a body in Washington, D.C. that worked together to solve the problems of this country. And instead, all we got is just freaking bickering and bullshit.
Well, here's the thing. You know? Ironically, we have exactly that. Joe Biden and the Democrats passed the first infrastructure bill in fucking 3 decades.
And how many Republicans got caught standing in front of those damn ribbon cutting ceremonies and taking credit? Trump
himself will. Marjorie Taylor Greene, all the jobs created in her district since she has been in office, all of them, since she has been in office, came from an electric battery plant for electric cars, an EV battery park that was put there, like 3,000 jobs. That's the entire job growth in her entire time in office, because of money that came there from the rescue package, which is one of the greatest environmental laws ever passed, and only passed, and that's why Trump's always talking about the Green New Scam. What he's talking about, he's fucking rolling back. He wants to roll back the funding that put that battery plant in her district. And I say, start there. Everybody who doesn't want this shit in their district, move it the fuck out. Everybody, you know, if that funding still has to exist, send it someplace where it's wanted. California, New York, you know, a blue state where they will appreciate it and grow on it. Pennsylvania, right? Yeah. But that, to me, that has to be part of our push as well. Like, that is a better thing to say to her than in any situation. Just people should bring that fucking plan up every time they talk to her. I don't give a fuck that she looks like a troll. I don't give a fuck that she might be the bomber. I don't give a fuck that, I think these are all funny and good talking points. But if Democrats in the House just went, I'm sure that, Representative Green from the great state of Georgia is hoping that this funding doesn't dry up because it's the only thing keeping the EV battery plant afloat as it gets started in her district, which is the only job growth she's had. Like, lay that at her feet and then walk away. You don't owe her your time and fierceness, and letting her stew. They will fight in their own head for you.
Have you ever thought about throwing your hat in the ring and running for Congress?
I am running for president in 2028, young man. If
brother,
fucking Williamson can do it.
Hey, look, let me tell you something.
Long hair and all.
I say this to a lot of people. You are absolutely one of the most intelligent people that I know. And I don't say that to many people. I think, that we need more people to get in this fight. And like I said, I haven't announced anything yet, but I'm going to be I'm going to be active. I'm going to be very active in 2026.
Hey man, I'll help raise money for you too. Please run for anything.
I'm going to start making noise this year.
Great.
At the end of the day, it's time for us to start really, reaching out to folks and doing what we can to try to take this country back. And look, let me tell you something. When I made West Virginia the 29th state for medical cannabis, I didn't do it for Democrats. I did it for everybody. I did it because the moment that you win your election, it no longer becomes Republican and Democrat. It becomes you representing the people. And
right.
You know what? Why can we not get to that? Why do we have people who go to Washington, D.C., and if you're pushing legislation, it's for everybody. Everyone in your state, your district, they are your constituents.
Yeah.
And I just wish we could get people to get to that. We have to do something. We need to, I think that if we don't go back and literally rebuild our education system, I think we're going to be done. For 50 years, they have attacked public education. And now we're seeing the ramifications of that. The reason why we have a population that is so easily duped, and oh, by the way, a big part of that also happens to be with the news agencies that no longer have to follow the fairness doctrine, that are feeding these people absolute bullshit. The very people that daggone listen to this shit, that drink from the fountain of Fox, are the ones that are going to be hurt the worst. And the only thing I can say is I hope that I hate the fact that they're going to be hurt really bad, but I do hope that it's enough pain that opens their damn eyes as to what the hell's going on, because we really need to take back our country, and then we need to friggin' go into a period of friggin' healing, and that needs to happen.
Yeah, I agree. And I think our job as Democrats, largely in terms of messaging and because the idea is like I would be a Democrat running as an American, and that's got to be the message, I think, for the next Democrat that's running for president. I'm a Democrat, but I'm running as an American because we're all Americans, and I can disagree. I can be of two minds about something until I get all the details. We all can, and so to pretend you don't, that there's some sort of through line that's pure, that everybody understands all at once, is an absurdity in a diverse and broad country like ours. So what you do is you run most capable on the best information you can possibly get. That's the primary thing. Save and serve as many lives as you possibly can in every emergency and circumstance that you're in, and better the lives of every American, whether they voted for you or not. That is as a foundation. If you address everything that happens in Congress or in the Senate or as a presidential candidate from that route, and everybody knows it, because you could argue that Trump did that exact thing in the dumbest way possible. They call it populism, because it's kind of broad and full of xenophobic horseshit. right? He pretends to have the information instead of, being aware that it takes a brain capable of processing the, variant details from a lot of different, I'll have the bbest people. So true. I'll have the best AI for my presidency. I'll be the first one to have a robot VP because that's the safest I'll be, because nobody will want me to be killed and him to be put in place. So they will figure out what its pronouns are. It'll decide. But point I'm trying to make is that if your root is from that point and everybody that's your essential brand, then everything you say, in terms of policy, people will get that you're not, being impure to the deepest people in your party, and you're not crossing over into the other side or any of that stuff. You're like, this is what we got to work with for real. These are the exit routes from this fire, folks. It's not because I like freeways over local roads. That's not the point. I love the farmer's market, but you're going to have to drive down the road where the farmer's market is canceled today, because that's the road you need to evacuate through. You understand? I'm not attacking the farmer's market doing this. And Republicans never have to do this. Democrats are always like, look, we have a lot of respect for our local farmers, but we're going to have to shut it down today so that we can get through this, and we will, we understand these booths are not just booths, and they're not just selling things. These are things they put their heart to. Get the fuck out of the way. There's a fire, right? So to me, I feel like we can reclaim that, because that's how you show genuine caring in that circumstance. Jimmy Carter, rest his soul, hammering nails with a bruised eyeball, like with his black eye under his eye, is an image that always comes to me. Like, it is one of those images that just is always with me these days. It has been, because that was, the first time I saw it was like early 2000s. And that man, like, that's got to be the emblem. And will they attack it? Sure. Will they talk shit? Sure. Will we have to have arguments about these kind of things and push back on ridiculousness? And that'll be an absolutely important part of it. But the root of it is that man on top of a fucking roof driving nails at 80 years old, or, 82 years old when he was up there. Yeah. And that's crucial. And I think, the Democrats can do it. The Republicans cannot. They have built their entire structure on us versus them, and we can't, and still remain Democrats. Because as much as I have a problem with the 1% and the variant differences between all these classes, America is one person, one vote. And if that's our guiding principle, then money in politics matters less. The messaging becomes more real and more raw and more personal and more giving and more supportive. And we don't have to play in their sandbox. It's not about going low or going high, because you know how I talk on this show and we know how you talk. Neither of us have a fucking problem throwing it around. But when it comes down to it, what voters are going to have to need to know about Democrats, and Democrats need to make this part and parcel to how they govern, is that we can't avoid the emergencies life. They're going to show up. We're going to have epidemics. We're going to have tornadoes. We're going to have fires. We're going to have geopolitical, maybe international terrorism, things that show up. And we want to be the trusted source in that circumstance, always. Because if they don't have that, they at least want a big dog at the edge of the yard that will bark at everybody. And that's all Trump is. That's the idiot. Yep. It's like that line in the LA Story. He's like, normally I don't like being around interesting people because that means I have to be interesting. And she says, does that mean you think I'm interesting? And he says, all I know is that when I'm around you, I start showing off, which is the idiot's version of being interesting. And there's a version of that with Trump, is that people would rather have a fake bravado version of nationally secure blather than a quiet, unknown, functional one. Because Biden's national security team has been fucking killing it in the worst of circumstances. Nobody knows it.
Yeah.
No, right?
Yeah.
So-
You're right. You're right.
So we've got to sell the worth of what we're doing.
Now, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be on here because I don't know if you got Philip coming on.
Yeah.
But I do want to ask you, did you see that orange friggin' gas station hot dog Hulk Hogan get booed
Yes.
off the stage?
Yeah.
Oh, I loved it. I
Right.
loved it.
Look, man, the best, you know who's doing the best work for us right now as Democrats? You know who's doing the best work? The assholes around Trump that are telling him it was a landslide. Because I got to tell you,
Yeah.
when Hillary Clinton won by 3 million votes, she doubled the margin that he has right now. And she still lost the Electoral College. But she won, more actual votes. Biden won more actual votes, right? And so the people that stayed home and all that kind of stuff, and the whole, like, can I change my vote and what's a tariff and all this stuff, that's real shit. And people, the other thing, too, is there's this thing that has been bothering me for a long time. And I've been, in my own head, I call it Rebel Incorporated, which is that there used to be a genuine sense of, beyond the American Revolution, which would be a true rebellion against a monarch. There's been this kind of like the Marlon Brando leather jacket version of rebellion that got commodified into, there's a store in New York called Trash and Vaudeville that I love, and I get rock clothes. Oh, I don't see Phil in the room. Is he knows it's video, Andrea? Because I don't see him in here. I just see the major. Because I guess he's waiting in another room. But this whole idea that like people are like on the right, listen to Ted Nugent right now. He's anti-government, doesn't even fucking know why. He voted for Trump because he's anti-government, and now he believes the government's going to solve everything. The same people who are like, the government is the biggest problem. Government doesn't create jobs. The president doesn't create jobs. Remember that shit? Donald Trump is the greatest job creator in the history of the world. Okay, motherfucker. Then the government does create jobs through policy.
Yeah. Well, when we're seeing all the pain that's happening, we need to make sure and let them know, point blank. But this is great, right? This is
what you voted for.
This is what you wanted. This is what you voted for. So yeah, we're here, man. Congratulations.
Right, and the rough part is, especially in purple and blue states, is that Democratic leadership will do a lot of work to make sure that the damage that Trump does is felt less in these areas. And so these people might be a little more sympathetic to what he's saying because they're not feeling the damage. Whereas the red states will blame, everybody but him. So that's where I would say that all the Democrats that are not, like drawing this massive line and going, you shall not pass as their only methodology. And they're going, oh, he seems like a completely qualified guy. We'll see if he can make it through. But, obviously we're going to have hearings and yada, yada, yada. What that does is that takes all the heat off of the Democrats. And Trump can do his whole, like, he came highly recommended. Blah, blah, blah. Anybody who's not voting on one of these panels can say whatever the fuck they want about Trump's nominees being good or bad or whatever, because ultimately the people in West Virginia, the people in Tennessee, the people in Kentucky and all these other places, they're going to blame Democrats if Trump can't get what he wants.
Of course.
They're going to. And so there should be a strategy. If Democrats aren't going to vote with this, they're like, look, my constituents, you can even lay it on your constituents. Like, I would love to solve our issue in this, this, and this, but my constituents would send me packing, and rightly so, if I voted for this. So I'm not going to. But this is what the president wants, and if his party can get it across the line, that they're going to have to do it themselves. If Democrats do that to every bill that he puts forward, when it passes, if the stuff that they know is going to pass and they can't stop, if it passes, then it's all on him.
All them. Yep.
Right. And even the Republican voters can't go, well, it would have been perfect, but Democrats fucked it up, or they wouldn't let it through. He had this major fix. Okay. Okay, Andrea, let me give you another link in a second. we're having an issue getting Phil in here. Hold on, I'll send it to you again. Maybe there's an issue. Maybe it's Moldovan hackers or something. There's always, because Phil's, look, the fact that he can even call into the show that is a miracle. And also, I would like to say in the got it. Okay, let's see if that's the issue. Yeah,
I think it's
it
also important to also state that he's in Ukraine. Russia just surpassed the 800,000 KIA.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm going to tell
For
you
what?
It's amazing that they haven't started carpet bombing the entire damn country.
Right. Well, and I agree. Now, there are two reasons. You as a military man are very aware of this. There are two reasons why this doesn't happen in certain circumstances. Either they won't because they know tactically it won't work, or they can't. That it's all fucking bluster. That their military has been so degraded that they are having to borrow troops from North Korea, borrow drones from Iran. Imagine
there were
number 2 military in the world, right?
Yeah. There was a helicopter that was shot down the other day, but that was the first time a helicopter or an aircraft have been basically shot down. And the reason why is because they haven't been flying across Ukraine, because Ukraine has the capability to bust them out of the sky easily with, the Dragons and the Stingers that we have provided them with. I mean, you're right. They don't have the ability to carpet bomb because, it is what it is. They don't have the capability. I did listen to Zelensky when they were acting about, okay, can you guys forgive? And Zelensky said, how can you tell that man who lost his wife and children to forgive? There will be no forgiveness for Vladimir Putin. I love that he stood his ground.
I agree. And I think he was, and I see Phil in the background, which is great. Hold on one second. Let me see if I can do this real quick. Let's see. Yes, I know the names will be wrong on this, but give me 1 second, just because I love the idea of both of you being able to talk at the same time. Give me 1 second. Let's see.
I can be Johnny Million. I'm cool with that.
Give me this. I'll paste that in there. Okay.
Hey, Phil. I actually was going to trim my beard yesterday and messed up. So
you just let it go.
I'm trying to get to your level, my brother. You're like wizard sleeve beard right there, man.
It is awesome. Unmatched. Absolutely. So that said, welcome to both of you guys, because we sometimes will have a tacit conversation, and I don't know how much time you have, Major, to stick around for a couple minutes, but your military experience, and Phil, your time in a lot of these zones, I think, is both invaluable. I think both of you have insights into this circumstance that are rare in the current discourse. And we were just talking a little bit about how Zelensky held his ground, Phil, against and he did what was it, Lex Fridman's podcast as well. And look, Lex Fridman has been coasting on this idea that because he speaks quietly and he went to MIT, that he's somehow smart. Like it is almost like a master class in how barely talking at all makes people think you are confident in what you're saying. Literally, that's the fucking show. Yeah. And it's always boggled my mind, but he's obviously just as dumb and audience captured and trapped in these fucking pro-Russia talking points as anybody else. It's annoying, and it's the illusion of him having some understanding of technology or his background in MIT that automatically makes him, it's going to be a smart conversation. And how this has become new legacy media is beyond me. But man, Zelensky just was like, would not let him off the hook. It was a beautiful thing to see.
Good.
Finally.
Go ahead, Phil.
Sorry, I can't hear the major, Al.
Oh, okay, that's weird. It should crisscross over there. It might be an issue with if I do it. I'll relay it because we have this sometimes when Johnny comes on and it's just a technological issue. It'll create a loop if I do that. But 1 second. Phil, can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine, yeah.
Okay, great. So let me do this real quick. How do I do this? Guest. I'm going to have to add an audio source. So I'm playing with fire. It's going to be exciting. Here we go.
Check 1 2 1 2. Check 1 2.
Yeah. You're 3. You guess 1. There we go. Control audio via. Okay. There we go. And then I'll just unhide all. There we go. So yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Phil, do you hear that?
No. You can't hear me.
Give me 1 second. I'm working on it. I'm still working. I'll make it happen. I'm not afraid.
All right.
Monitor and output. Now this might create a loop for a second, but we'll work on it. Phil, can you hear this? Check for me, Major.
Check 1 2 3.
There you go. There's the feedback.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So, excellent. So what
It's a slight delay, but I hear you.
Yeah. So give me this real quick, and then what I'm going to do is I'll turn this guy off, and hopefully we should be all right. Can you check for me, Phil?
Yeah, check 1 2.
Yeah. You guys hear him, but I don't hear him on an output. There we go. Close. There we go. And then yeah, we should kind of be good, I think.
Can you hear me, Phil?
Yeah, I can hear you, Major.
Awesome.
Okay, there we go. So the key being, and I hope
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
not.
So the Friedman thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's another example just for Carlson. People think that they can just parachute in here and understand everything. I mean, the moment the reason I'm doing this on my file is because I'm currently uploading
Hey, Hal. Let me go ahead and pull out because it's double. So I don't want to ruin the rest of your show.
Okay, I don't know. The chat, yeah, there's an echo. Sorry, I was trying to wire this together because you guys are on the same site. You're on the same page. So
Always.
we'll try this again, Major. We'll
Say.
set this up in the future, and I'll do it on purpose in the future, so that'll save us some go around if that's all right.
Hey, always love being on your show, my brother. Be safe.
Thanks so much. All right. Thank you. There he goes. All right. Now let me, this is going to muck things up in this situation. Let me turn this back on and I'll copy you and put you in here and we'll be back to normal. Oops, hold on. In just 1 second. Thanks for at least attempting it. The looping of audio because you guys, you guys both on the same web page because that's how I source things in. And so if you can't hear, you should be able to interhear each other like we do with Chicago. But if you can't, then it's a whole like restart. So anyways,
sure.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, I mean, this is unusual because I'm doing this on my phone because on my laptop, I'm uploading kind of, new year, what we can expect in 2025. Both, with the situation and with my intentions on the channel on the edge. But I do touch a little bit on reaction to the interview, but I think I'm going to do a much larger kind of bullet point thing. And then I might actually, it would be like pulling teeth, but sit through the entire thing and do a reaction video on my newly launched Patreon channel. So,
right.
But let's talk a little bit about that interview. I mean, as I was saying, it's another example, like Tucker Carlson just thinking he can drop into the Kremlin and talk about very complex issues that revolve around this conflict and revolve around Russia and what Russia's up to. I mean, that was humiliating what Carlson went through, and it wasn't much better with Friedman, and even worse because Friedman is I loved when Zelensky called him out on that, but he clearly, Friedman
Yeah.
Has lost touch with, I don't know if he ever actually lived in Russia. He left when he was 12, it's my understanding, to go to Chicago. I don't know if he has lived there or visited Russia while he was a matured adult. But some of the questions that he was asking Zelensky were so coming from such an ignorant place, and the lack of understanding not only of how geopolitics works, but how diplomacy works, and what it is to and who and what Putin is.
Yeah.
I mean, that thing when he said, when he got into it and he said, "You don't think that Putin loves his no?"
Yeah.
And so she's like, "No, I don't think he loves his people, because he doesn't. He doesn't love his people. He believes in the power of Russia. He believes in Russian empire and imperialism. He believes in the greatness of the state that is Russia and Moscow.
Over
he doesn't
everything.
if he loved his people, he wouldn't have loaned them up in apartment buildings in his aspirations
to get the job. Yeah.
Love.
Well, also there, again, Deutschland über alles wasn't just a rallying cry of Germany over the rest of the world. It was also over the German citizens themselves. Your lives are secondary. And that there's been a lie that's been pressed in, and I would say like American anti-war films, that there's this kind of belief that any war, whatever you're fighting for, you're just fighting for the power of that country. Like it's all a resource war. We're all fighting for kings or crusade or the fucking Muslim expansion of the 12th century or any of that shit. Like it's not about you. Everybody's cannon fodder. Instead of the beliefs of those things, because in Deutschland über alles, the idea is that the German people must survive even if the German people don't. And so the country itself represents this chunk of land that will eventually become the chunk of land that we broom everybody else off of. When it comes to Russia, it's the same fucking thing. Right?
Yeah,
he doesn't care about the Russian people might have to die to save the Russian people. Now, we've heard that joke told in Spies Like Us, in Johnny Get Your Gun, which is the movie that was used in the video for, what's democracy, Dad? It has something to do with young men killing each other over. And no, it fucking doesn't. Like, that movie makes me so mad, but it's such we shouldn't have been involved in World War II propaganda. It's fucking nuts. Like the video's fantastic and the story told in it is terrific, but the movie itself is screwy as shit. And it's in direct contradiction
What's this movie?
Johnny Get Your Gun.
All right. Okay.
But because it oversimplifies this. But the idea that he loves his people is an absurdity. He doesn't. It's this cartoonish view. And if, to some degree, Lex Friedman believes that Biden doesn't love the American people and Trump does. He thinks this. And the idea that you would even think about the leadership of a country in the abstract, an individual, in terms of he loves his people is so odd. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. And the second I stopped watching Lex Friedman was when he did an interview with Ann Applebaum, who has forgotten more about this region and the conflicts in this region and the motivations and how we found ourselves here down through the centuries. She's forgotten more about those topics than I will ever learn. She's a rock star. She's an absolute rock star. And she sat down with Friedman, and she was so deferential because she's such a polite person. And he was asking such inane questions and coming from a place of complete ignorance of what is Russia and which is shocking because, again, he is, he is a son of a Soviet immigrant to the United States. He ostensibly speaks Russian, but he clearly has lost touch with what Russia is. And a Russian would tell him this.
And that's giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah,
because
that's me giving him the benefit of the doubt.
But sympathetic. He could just be stupid and sympathetic.
Well, yeah, I mean, a useful idiot, right? But again, a Russian would argue with him about some of the things that some of the perspectives that he was coming from. We're not, you pansy, naive Westerners. We will sacrifice ourselves for the greatness of the Russian state and the Tsar and the Kremlin. And this is a mentality that is born into Russians from a very early age. You don't matter. The state matters. And it's the empire matters. You are just
Uber alles.
grist for the mill. Yep. You are grist for the mill, and you should be proud of it. You be proud to sacrifice yourself for the greatness of Russia, for the Rodina, for the motherland. And Lex had no concept of that. So he's coming at it, or at least in the interview, he comes off as having no understanding of that. So he comes off, he is coming in at an angle that Zelensky knows very well, by the way.
Yeah.
Zelensky knows exactly what's going on with Friedman.
Point. Right.
I think Zelensky knew almost instantly that Friedman had no concept of these things that are inherent in his people because he's been Americanized. I think even at one point he said, you've spent most of your life in America, I can tell. Because he's not coming from a place that a Russian would. And it was embarrassing. And just like Tucker Carlson, they're out of their depth. These guys should not be doing the interviews with Putin and with Zelensky. You need people, you know who I'd love to see interview Zelensky? A guy like Steve Rosenberg for the BBC's Moscow guy. Or Luke Harding from, I believe he's with The Guardian or The Independent. These people who have put in the time. You don't just rock up unless you've done your homework. Now, I'm not saying nobody can interview Putin unless you've become a Russia-centric, student of their history and all the rest of it. But do your damn homework. Do your due diligence. Neither of these guys have done it. They've just rocked up thinking that they can just, we'll just have a little chat. No, it's fucking complicated here, man. Yeah. The reasons for this war and why the war is continuing. I mean, okay, so.
There's a lot. I get it. Yeah.
You come from, first off, the language issue. Okay, even in like diplomatic circles, the head of state of a nation should speak that nation's language. Fuck you. I don't care if you don't speak Ukrainian. He speaks English. Speak to him in English. Right. If you don't speak Ukrainian but you speak Russian, speak to him in Russian, which is at the end what they did. But he's the head of state, and to even imply that he should speak in Russian is such a stupid fucking insult.
Right.
And it's not done in diplomatic circles, by the way, nor is it done in journalism either. Right. So generally, I mean, there are some wide rules when it comes to journalism, but in in diplomacy, in protocol, you always speak in your nation's native tongue. Right. Now, ironically enough, Zelensky's first language is Russian, but it was just, and then again, all the ignorance of how diplomacy works, and the idea that I have this dream that if you just sit down, you can all you'll come to a peace. You motherfucker, diplomacy and peace negotiations last frickin' months.
Yeah,
because you have to. You're gonna answer complex questions like, what do we do about Mariupol? What do we do about the people who are displaced from Mariupol and would like to go home, but they don't want to live under Moscow's rule? And that goes 100-fold for the people of Crimea, especially the Crimean Tatars, who Moscow has tried to ethnically cleanse for literally centuries. Okay, those people are not going to return to their homes if Moscow has dominion over Crimea. It's not going to happen. And for Friedman to sit there. Sorry?
It wouldn't be safe to anyways, and they would be able to broom these people bit by bit. You could salami slice the people that come back and kill them or convert them or force them to do all kinds of shit. You'd have banking leverage against them. You'd have control over there's a myriad of things. That's why these things take a long time. That's why Minsk wasn't shit.
What passport? Yeah, well,
Right.
Minsk was a fucking joke. Minsk was Europe deathly afraid of going to a direct conflict with Russia, so they made this fake. We're going to send in observer. I mean, to begin with, the Russians never did the first step of Minsk. The
Not
first step
a bit,
in the
right.
agreement of Minsk was that that heavy weaponry would be pulled to a certain. It was 100 kilometers distance from the point of contact. Nobody ever did that. The Russians didn't do it, so the Ukrainians didn't do it.
Right.
And then they sent around observers who I have spoken to here in Ukraine repeatedly.
Yeah.
And the observers, I don't want to dox anybody, so I'll be cautious about what I say, but the observers told me the whole damn thing was a joke because our supervisors told us distinctly, we don't want to, well, implicitly, we don't want to catch the Russians breaking the Minsk Accords because then we're going to have to deal with it. Yeah. Right now, we're just hoping it'll go away.
Yeah, it'll stick.
We're hoping that everything will simmer down, and being the pacifistic Europeans that they are, because of course their history, Europe's history, is filled with catastrophic wars, and this would be a catastrophic war. So they were terrified. So the inspectors and the monitors, I mean, they knew that the so-called separatists were shooting into the cities to try and make like the Ukrainians were doing it. They knew it. They saw it. I have monitors that have told me they were on a road and an artillery system passed them on the road going the other direction to where they thought a launch point was. They went to the launch point. That vehicle had just passed them on the road, and they could see the track marks in the mud. They could see the launch point. They could see the burnt grass and all the rest of it. That vehicle had just fired. But because the rules of observation in these monitoring missions were, unless you see it with your very eyes, the point of launch, then we can't put it into a report. The Europeans were terrified of what
this escalating.
Ukraine could turn into. And so they desperately tried to avoid it, and now we find ourselves where we are. And unless we help the Ukrainians win, they will have a direct conflict. Everybody kind of recognizes it.
Yes, and the irony that if it had escalated at the time, the U.S. response would have been a lot stronger, and there wouldn't have been this kind of tacit belief from the Obama administration that this might hold as well. This illusion of peace is what created this circumstance. And the Russians play on that every fucking time. I want to show this real quick if I could. And I'm sorry the names overlap and they aren't there because the major was up with us right here. But this is the current number. Phil.
Yep, we're over 800,000. We're over 801,670,
1,660 since last night. These are yet to be fully confirmed, but it's well within the margin of it's over 800,000. It's obvious.
Yep. And the Brits are showing the same thing.
Yes, and by the way, to your point, 369 planes, 0 here, 0 helicopters, and 0 cruise missiles. Now, I would argue that they haven't fired any for a while, and they don't have anti-aircraft cover because the Ukrainians are have this, they're not going into the area with aircraft, and Kursk is making it a big problem for them. We'll address that in a second. But the reason they haven't shot any down is because the Russians are afraid to go over the area. There aren't any. Like you were saying, there's one helicopter goes down a little bit ago, and the only reason is because they don't dare fly anything. The drones themselves, the little ones, can take out airplanes just by flying a bunch of them like a bird strike in the path of where they know these guys are going to fly. And since they can see strategically where the people are, where their troops are, they know where they're going to fly through to bomb shit and where they aren't. You just have drones ready to go up. You can make an artificial bird strike with a bunch of useless drones. If you know,
and I speak about this in the video that I'm the casualty numbers. I speak about this in the video that I'm uploading, so I don't want to give any spoilers. So everybody should, after we're done and you finish your morning show, go check out over at On the Edge. I've got a little thing, and I touch on this casualty factor. But in addition to that, did you see the recent story of the F-16? Everybody going, oh, the F-16 is not going to. F-16 took out 6 cruise missiles, set a world record set a world record. Ukrainian pilot saved us from 6 cruise missiles in one sortie. So, you know, but we've got to do better, and the Europeans have got to do better. And one of the most important things we can do is air defense.
Yeah.
So more Patriots, more.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. Lost you for a split second. Beg your pardon. Did I get you back? Can you check for me? I don't know why that's weird. 1 second. Hold on. I'm going to reload my page over here and see if it helps. Give me 1 second. There we go. Hopefully that'll remedy some of it. Are you there? Can you hear me? Phil? Phil, check.
There we go.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
Thanks. Sorry.
The lag doesn't seem nearly as bad either.
Yeah, that helps a little bit. So, there were a couple of things we've been talking about, not the least of which is this is as as Russian losses in Ukraine mount, Putin faces devastating demographic time bomb. Now, I've been talking about China and Russia's demographics problems almost as long as Peter Zeihan has. I would argue that I've been talking about the Chinese one longer than he has, but it didn't gain any ground until people started recognizing that like, okay, well, if Sparks is saying it, I mean, he's a comedian. But if this guy's saying it because this is his industry, then there might be something to it. And I respect that. That's fine. Check my fucking numbers. Absolutely. But I'm not pulling it out of my ass. And this is one of the things that's been an ongoing problem specifically for, the last 2 years especially, but this idea of why they had to attack when they attacked, because if they waited any longer, they weren't going to have a fighting force at all. It's weird that a couple of years into this war, they were having to pull soldiers from North Korea, but had they waited a couple more years, this is how it would have started. If this war started right now instead of a couple of years ago, they would have been pulling North Korean troops and shit earlier, right away, because they're running out of people. And this is a long-term problem that they are facing and has a lot to do with this, like, reclaiming. I think, they want the fertile women and men of Ukraine to reclaim as Russians again before they die off as a people, because the Muscovites are not reproducing, at replacement levels. Mm-hmm. Nobody is.
And their mortality rate is, terrible. It's horrible. This plays into, not just talking about the demographics of, say, China or Russia, which are dwindling, but this also allows me to address this issue of mobilization in Ukraine, because a lot of people are hypercritical of Ukraine not lowering the age of conscription down to 18. Mm-hmm. Well, there's a reason why, and people, this is why you need to... This is why people like Friedman and Tucker Carlson, and even a lot of people who are pretty good at covering this region, they come at it from a Russian perspective. Look at this from a Ukrainian perspective. Mm-hmm. You need to know what was happening 20 years ago in this country. Mm-hmm. Okay, 20 years ago in this country, the birth rate was miserably low. Mm-hmm. This is not a big generation. The kids in their 20s, give or take, are not a huge percentage of the population, because people weren't having kids back then because the economic and social situation in Ukraine was freaking miserable.
Yes.
So they don't have a lot of 20-year-olds to spare. Yeah. Somebody's going to have to build this country after the war. So you can't ignore it, obviously. You've got to, and they are, and it's controversial, but they are. They're going younger and younger in their conscription numbers, age numbers. But you have to understand why they're reluctant to do it, because there aren't a lot of that generation around to spare. So all these demographic things, and Ukraine is convinced that, and I think they're right, that when that generation rebuilds this country, it's going to be a powerhouse. So you can't, they're not disposable. These people aren't Russians. They don't treat their citizenry like the Russians do. They figure it out that, we're going to need that generation. Mm-hmm. We can't throw them at the war. Although now, of course, they kind of have to, because of the just number disparity. But that's a huge part of why they haven't, is because 20 years ago,
They're
things were
picking and
screwed. What do you
choosing,
got?
and they're only doing it out of a sense of genuine emergency instead of Russia just scooping up whoever the fuck they can. And most of that generation in Russia bugged out of the country in the first place. Remember all those lines of cars trying to get the hell out? So, according to Ukrainian figures on January 7th, Russian losses passed another grim milestone, surpassing 800,000. The figures from the General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces do not specify killed or wounded. The overall consensus is that it includes dead, wounded, missing, and captured. Which, by the way, missing, dead, captured, dead. As far as the Ukrainians will capture some people, and they've been removed. Sometimes they're returned or whatever, but. There's so few of those compared to everybody else. And the Russians leave their wounded behind, so whatever. But according to this is the big part. According to Siersky, more than half of those losses, 427,000 of them, happened in 2024 alone. Mm-hmm. 1 year, almost 500,000 people. This is accelerating in the absolute worst direction. If 2022 was, if 2023 was worse than 2022, and 2024 was almost double what 2023 was, what's 2025 going to be like? Holy shit!
Yeah,
it's brutal. And
even if it doesn't increase at that rate, and we are looking at 30 to 45,000 men casualties every month, at that rate, we're looking at April, May to cross the 1 million man mark.
Right.
It's going to happen. It is going to happen. See, this is another thing. Yeah, no, it's not going to happen because there will not be a peace deal in the next 4 months. 4 or 5 months. It's not going to happen. It's too complex. Right. There are too many unanswered questions. They might get to a ceasefire, but they will not get to a peace deal before they cross the. I'm also skeptical of a ceasefire because Putin has to take more than what he's got. The only way he walks away from this and keeps his head is if he can claim victory by taking the Donbass, and that means taking a city called Kramatorsk. Okay, Kramatorsk is considered the gateway to the Donbass.
Right.
They struggle to take towns like right now they're taking a town called Pokrovsk, and I struggle to even call it a city. It's nothing. So he can't take a proper city like Kharkiv. He can't. Otherwise, he would have done it. He can't take Odessa, and he sure as hell can't take Kiev. And unless he can do really, in terms of victory, would be taking Odessa and Kiev. That's really what he wants to do. He wants to swap out the government to a puppet government. So he needs the capital, and he wants dominion over the Black Sea, and he can't get that without Odessa. Sevastopol is now a useless port for him because Odessa is still in Ukrainian hands and will always threaten Sevastopol. So what was this goddamn war for?
Right.
He's got to walk away from this by claiming he has recovered the ethnically identifying people of the poor Donbass. Bullshit. Right. It's all about a land bridge to Sevastopol because that is where he wants naval power because he wants to he wants to exercise Russian naval power globally, and Sevastopol is vital to do that. The Kerch Bridge won't support Crimea. We've talked about this many, many times. He needs their land bridge, so he needs Donbass. And he can sell it to the Russians as having saved the poor, ethnically Russian people of Donbass from the Nazis in Kiev. But that dog won't hunt. Mm-hmm. That dog won't hunt. The Russian people, I'm giving away I'm giving all the spoilers from that video. Yeah, no, I'll finish this thought. He is going to have a lot when the gun falls silent. People are going to look around and go, "Why did we do that?"
Yep.
And it's not going to be satisfactory. A million people to grab a bunch of now utterly destroyed cities and factories and towns in Donbass. Have you made our naval power greater? Have you improved the power and the prestige of the Russian Empire, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin? No, you fucking haven't.
Right.
And a million people died or are living their lives without limbs because of it. He's fucked. He's so fucked.
Right.
And that's why Friedman, in his idiotic interview, isn't able to comprehend that Russia doesn't want to stop the war. Well, Russia might. Putin doesn't want to stop the war.
He
Putin has
can't.
no desire to stop this war.
Right. So the Polish
Polish
consulate is shut
consulate,
in St. Petersburg. That is a huge move. And again, it took them long enough, but Jesus Christ. But that to me says they're folding up tents. They know that there's no going back, and there may not be any reason to deal with this country except through international organizations like the UN or something going forward once it collapses, right? Why would you want to be there when shit falls apart? And I don't think of what other country in the world where you'd have nearly a million people lost in a war that you chose. Imagine if the United States had lost 1 million.
Oh, no! This war would have ended. This war would have ended in the first year.
I mean, everybody involved in setting it up would have. Everybody complains that we never, hold people accountable. Holy shit! 1 million. Like 800,000.
Yeah. Everybody's pissed off that nobody did anything about it. Bush or Rumsfeld, and that was how many people did we lose in Iraq? No, because in America and in Western liberal democracies, you are answerable to your people because you empower your people, something they don't do in Russia.
Right.
Russians can do this, and again, it's not either, and this is why Friedman doesn't grok it, and I hate the fact that Elon Musk has taken Robert Heinlein's wonderful word of grok.
Yes.
Yeah, Musk has stolen Heinlein's word of grok. Friedman doesn't grok Russia.
Yeah,
it's not. It's very, very intrinsic, and it goes down to a really base level of who the individual is in relation to the state. And the Russians just don't think about it the same way as Westerners do. They simply don't. Russians, I love Russians when they get their back up and say, well, we are a European country. Yeah, you're a European country when it suits you.
Yeah.
But your ideology and your perspective, no. So Friedman doesn't. He's too disconnected. He's too Americanized. He doesn't understand the some of these really fundamental differences in who you are when you are a Russian. When you have what they call the Ruskaya Dusha, the Russian soul. That we're special. We're unique. This empire that we built is unique because we have the Russian soul. And Friedman doesn't understand any of that. And Putin relies on that, that you sacrifice yourself for the empire because that's what you do as a good Russian. And it's just the cynicism of it. Look, it's not going to stop. And when it does stop, Putin is done. And they don't have the capacity to take a place like Pokrovsk, much less Kramatorsk. But if they can, it'll be a bloody ass fight for Kramatorsk. But if he takes it, he might be able to do that, at least for a short while, as victory. But what the Ukrainians are going to have a hard time swallowing losing Mariupol and Crimea. So the idea that you could just suddenly be like, oh, well, now we're all going to stop shooting at one another and we're going to work it out diplomatically and everything will be fine, comes from such a place of ignorance about how the world works. So these guys like Friedman and Carlson should not be the ones doing these interviews. They don't fucking understand what's going on here.
Yeah.
Do it to somebody who's a professional.
Well, and again,
somebody who's
half the time I'm like, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about, and half the time I'm like, they know exactly what they're talking about. They're just liars. And in the case of Friedman, it's hard to tell because he comes across as such as like a weird, simpish, like tabula rasa. I think that's why people give him the benefit of the doubt, is because he talks like a blank slate, like somebody who just woke up from a fucking coma. And so everything that he hears, like, well, is that really true? You know, and you're like, okay,
Candide,
yeah,
being there.
yeah, exactly.
I take care of the garden.
Yeah,
You know,
Eve, I like to
yeah, no,
watch. Right.
it's it's really frustrating because there are good people out there who know what the fuck they're talking about. And Applebaum would be great. She'll
Yes.
have Anne go do an interview with Zelensky. You know, in fact, I think she has interviewed him in the past. But do it now. You know, send somebody like that in there. You know, send Jill Doherty in there for God's sakes. You know, I'm small fry. I'm a washed up old producer who wants to
That's the
retire.
spirit.
Hey, I'm doing my thing, but I'm not putting on airs. I'm not going to get an interview with Zelensky anytime soon.
Yeah.
But do it with somebody who knows what the fuck they're talking about.
Right.
Don't do it with these hacks. These hacks who have, because they've got 4.5 subscribers on their channel on YouTube, they get an interview with the president of Ukraine. Go fuck yourself.
Right.
What the hell? What the hell, man?
Yeah,
And he didn't even do his damn homework.
Yeah,
Dude, if you are going to be a guy like that, brush up. Get some people in. You're probably making a nice bit of coin. Go to Yale. Sit down with Timothy Snyder for an afternoon. Have a chat. Go to Stanford and have lunch with Mike McFaul. Then do your interview with Zelensky. But he was. You're right. I think there may have been some of this kind of willing ignorance because he does live in a world of the world that Moscow likes to promote, which is that the deep state and all this kind of crap, and that what he is saying is that only 3 men sat in a room, in a smoke-filled room, in the room where it happened. Is going to resolve this. And what that does is that diminishes a diplomatic corps. So the State Department isn't going to fix this. Oh, no. But you put the executive, you put POTUS in a room with Putin and Zelensky, and that's all it really needs to happen. And it's so disrespectful to the men and the women in our diplomatic corps, or the concept of diplomacy around the world. He fucking doesn't understand any of this. It's the idea that Putin likes to put out there, that real decisions are made in shadows, in back rooms, and that's how the world works. And sometimes, you know what? That is how the world works. But you know what sometimes happens is hard work. Sitting down with teams of people going over every line, every kilometer, the fucking minutia.
Yep.
That's where things really did happen 9 times out of 10.
The devil's in the details. But so is salvation.
You need key Democrats.
Right. So, by the way, for those that don't know, Putin is taking a page out of Donald Trump's book. He's selling and handing out crosses with his initials on them, kind of like the Trump Bibles. So fucking stupid. He is doing everything he can to try and create this illusion of piousness, this illusion of being aligned with, a greater cause and all this stuff. Meanwhile, see if I can. Well, this one will be.
And he's always kind of done that, but nothing like this. This is he's turned it up to 11.
Right. So those who don't know, this is Syrians pulling down the statue of Lenin in Syria that was put there by the Russians as you're on our side, right, guys? They're pulling it down with a bulldozer. While finding, by the way, these like torture chambers that the Russians helped them build. I don't know if you saw. I went over on my show, and it was one of the most like kind of difficult shows. As far as like trying to show without showing, because I don't want my channel shut down, because sometimes it stumbles upon something when you're looking at the B-roll that's coming off of Reddit and other places over there. But there was a report done about one of these mass grave sites in Syria where 100 to 150,000 people are buried that Assad killed. And it's just brutal watching these folks deal with this fact
Everywhere Russia touches, everywhere Moscow
everywhere.
touches,
Right.
it turns. And I'm sorry, I know this is going to sound bad, but I mean, I've done this for many, many years. Everywhere Moscow touches, they bring barbarity with them. It's just it's cruelty for cruelty's sake.
Yeah.
It's
So
intimidation. Weird. It's all relationships are binary. Therefore, I must dominate you or be the one dominated. So
yeah.
I must, because all power is a no set game, and it's binary. So they have this mentality. Look, if and when, hopefully, we recover territory in Ukraine, we're going to find those graves. We're going to find graves. Maybe not with the scale of what we're seeing in Syria, because Assad was doing it for years and years and years, and it's Syria. I've been to Syria a time. It's a rough place.
Yeah.
But regardless, we're going to find mass graves of tens of thousands of people in Donbass if we recover that territory. I have no doubt in my mind there will be stories of massacres, and probably it might come. Stories will come, but if the territory isn't, we won't have physical proof of it.
Yes.
But there's no doubt in my mind that there are mass graves in Donbass.
Yeah, no question. They've been striking Zaporizhia. Again, there's obviously a lot of fighting going on in and around Kursk. There's Engels. So they're hitting a lot of civilian targets.
They hit Engels. Yep. The Ukrainians hit Engels, which I'm happy to see. There's some concern that they might go for Dnipro. That would be foolish. Right. If they go for Dnipro, if they go for Zaporizhia, what they're really going to be going for is the left bank of the river, as a land obstacle, as an obstacle, the demarcation point. I would be stunned if Ukraine stops the war, agrees to a ceasefire, agrees to a peace, if the Russian troops are sat on the left bank of the Dnipro in those areas.
Right.
Because it'll just incentivize them to come back.
I mean, we're back to where we are. Like, basically, they just want to time out. They just want to time out so they can work the plays on the sidelines. It's a sport to them. So that a ceasefire to them is just a time out. We need to reload. And the idea that the Ukrainians would understand that that's what they're doing and shore up their defenses is somehow an act of war against Russia. That with Trump and his bullshit, I can understand. I wouldn't want somebody on my doorstep either. Hey man, what's your designs on attacking Russia? Because NATO and the United States are aligned. NATO's not going to make a move without us. So who gives a shit? At what point are we going to take Russia? Who thinks that's a worthwhile effort? What would be the purpose? Who fucking cares? Unless Trump himself can think of reasons to do it. Keep the oil, all that kind of shit that he's been throwing around forever. And this idea that he understands Russia's feelings about NATO, it's that's because he's a paranoid old fart. Not because he understands the region. Why? How about this? How do you think Ukraine feels with Russia on their border being able to have a military at all, considering what they use it for against Georgia, against the Baltics, against intervening in all kinds of other territories, and certainly Ukraine? How do you think they feel?
Yeah.
What do you at what point if remember all those times when Ukraine would we referenced this when the war was beginning to start, was that Russia would build up on their border and then back off and then build up on their border, and this is how they do this as part of their tactical trickery. So from Trump's point of view, if at one of those times where Russia builds up its forces on Ukraine's border, if Ukraine just went and panicked and fired missiles and tried to attack Moscow and take it in 6 days, because you can understand. They're building up troops right there at the border, right? You can understand how Ukraine would openly attack Russia, right? What's the fucking difference?
Yep.
I'll tell you what. One of them's your friend, and the other one you don't give a shit about. That's what's up with
Yeah,
Trump.
and also, you know, this perspective that was expressed by Friedman in this interview, that NATO expanded east, which is of course all the tankies and the MAGA and all the rest of it when they're
No, it
not
didn't.
when they have
It's volunteered.
a little no, NATO did not expand east. Those eastern nations that had suffered under occupation by Moscow following the end of the Second World War, the second they were free from Moscow's dominion, they went running west.
Yeah.
We didn't expand east. They ran west.
Yes.
Because Moscow, and this is another reason why I hope they lose this war for their own good. Frankly, I don't give a shit. But if there is any benefit to be gained for the Russians, it'll be that they finally look in the mirror and say, why is it every time we occupy a place, they hate us or they fight against us? What is that about? Why, you know, maybe we should think about that. And the concept of empire needs to be abandoned. And then the Russians won't even know who they are, and we go into a whole other range of shit. But
and
at
yet
the end of the day,
yet another reason, fuck Lex Friedman and his bullshit and this NATO expansion nonsense, because it only expands by people asking to join and being welcomed in. It is never done at the barrel of a gun saying, if you don't join us, you're fucked, and we'll give permission to somebody to attack you the way Trump talks about shit, like about not defending our own NATO allies. You know what does expand at the barrel of a gun? CSTO, the fucking Russian version of NATO that they set up does. It's all economic and military threats. If you don't join us, we will take you over.
And then once we've taken over your land, unless you abandon your passport and take a Russian passport, you don't get a pension. You don't get, you don't get any medical care. You are a non-person. They force you to take a Russian passport and be Russified, and then you have to. And this is the thing that Zelensky said again in the interview. Like, we speak Russian because we were colonized by Russia. They forced us to learn Russian. Another great thing that came out of that interview was turning when Friedman was like, don't you care what Putin, has to think? He's like, frankly, no. He's my fucking enemy. Why should I? I don't give a shit what he wants.
Yeah.
He's been killing my people for 3 years.
Squads into Bucha and laughed about it. No.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like saying, you got to consider the rapist from the rapist point of view, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's just fucking sick.
And the other thing is, like, you know what? I do care about his feelings. I want him to be fucking miserable every waking moment and tortured by nightmares in his sleep. That's how I care about Putin's fucking feelings. Fuck that guy. And the idea that you would even, again, placate somebody like that. I don't care what he feels strategically. If he's happy finally to get out of there, or upset that Russians get out of there, as long as they get out, I don't give a fuck about his feelings. I don't think it's more important that he's mad than Ukraine be free. Jesus.
You saw all the responses, I'm sure.
Yeah.
From all the various people, of like, I would have punched that. The patience that Zelensky exhibited was, and also though when he was passionate when he needed to be passionate, but he didn't attack Friedman. I would have attacked Friedman.
Yeah,
but at least when he was passionate.
Again, we talk about like being fighty and all that kind of stuff. When you go into like when we're talking about people who are legislating or working together in Congress and all that kind of stuff, we put a lot of weight on them being fighters. But when it comes to shit like this, where people are like tap dancing around, who the fuck is Lex Friedman? And to some degree, if you want to throw it back at me, who the fuck am I? Bring it. If somebody wants to argue this shit with me and question my motives or my purpose or whatever, I'll fucking defend my shit. And I don't have to go, hey, why are you yelling? Like, I don't give a fuck. So the idea that he somehow gets to dodge accountability for the bullshit that he's saying because somebody wants to be nice to him or have a level of comedy that does not exist in the political sphere in Russia or Ukraine right now because of the circumstance they're in. It's like, get the fuck out of here. What a dipshit. Like, and like somebody needs to go, Lex, You're a fucking dumbass. This is ridiculous. Same with Rogan. Rogan's a dumbass. I mean, talk about, like, it's one thing to be like being
all these
sympathetic.
guys.
Yeah, they're like on the fact that these assholes would spout the same talking points as Tucker Carlson or Scott Ritter or any of these fucking monsters who, or even Donald Trump. Again, a dude who was friends with Jeffrey Epstein for 2.5 fucking decades, hung around and was buddies with him long after he said they had broken it off. We now know from phone records. Why would that be my first choice in trying to understand a complex and dangerous issue like Russia attacking Ukraine at all, or even Israel, Gaza, or any of these things for that matter? Like, okay, fuck off. There's enough adults in the world. I don't even know why we have to talk to any of these sons of bitches. But if we do, I'm not going to act like they know what they're talking about just to make them feel better. Fuck off. Yeah. Other than that, I have no opinion. We're at the bottom of the hour, but I want to remind everybody, On the Edge is Phil's show. He's got a great episode, and he didn't give away all of it on today's episode, and it's worth checking.
I didn't, and I certainly didn't. What the episode that's loading up right now and should be available within about an hour is basically my look forward to 2025, both in terms of the conflict itself and what we intend to do at the show. What our goals are at the show, but then also a little bit of preview. But I think I'm gonna, as much as I am loath to do it, I think I'm gonna have to, actually pick through this thing and have to do a proper reaction piece. Maybe a little, dollar short and a day late, but still. But this is what I'm putting up today is worth a watch. And then we've got a very good interview scheduled for this Sunday at 8. And another one actually in the bank already for next week. So we're starting to get ahead of ourselves by a week, so we're not so pressed to find somebody to talk to every week, and so we get some breathing space. And I'm hoping with that breathing space that I can expand my output. So, but I explain it all in the video. So go take a look at it, and then watch on Sunday.
Real quick, just to clarify one thing real quick, and I want to So Trump had this dude next to him at this same thing where he was talking about this bullshit NATO talking point he had in that speech he gave yesterday. And he brought up this guy who's going to invest $40 billion in the United States. And he's from a company called Damak in Dubai, right? The company's Hussein Sajwani, this guy he had in there. I'd just like to introduce you to the Damak properties in Dubai front page of their website. Why should Russians buy property in Dubai? In recent times, the benefits of buying in Dubai from Russia, like all the breaks you'll get. This is look what the first page on this is on this Damak official. This is on their Instagram, and Trump Gulf Dubai on the as part of a sales pitch. The benefits of buying property in Dubai from Russia. Damak, Russia retreat, Chinese charge in Dubai property. This is what Damak does. Fuck this data center horseshit. This guy builds big luxury buildings as investment properties for Russians and Chinese oligarchs. Damak is
a place for them to flee to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's 7 floors of pedophilia in all of these towers. So don't even get me started. I mean, these are ditty buildings as far as the Russians are concerned. But that guy that Trump was introducing to everybody yesterday, he was like, he knows, he's so smart. He's great at this. Oh, he's great. He does all these deals. Okay, that's what he's talking about. This asshole. Yes, Damak brought the Russians into London a lot. And again, this is the other side of the Osama bin Laden, scheme of Saudis and rich money building in Europe. You remember, because Osama bin Laden's father was a huge builder,
steel magnate.
Yeah, he was a steel magnate and in real estate. And so they got all the it's where all the money came from. And so that's and his subsidiaries. Magnate, after the Bin Laden name got a bad rap because of the son, a lot of the money shifted over to their subsidiaries, and these fucking guys. Like, Jesus Christ. So anyways, we will obviously have plenty to talk about, and I have no doubt that Phil will have plenty to talk about on The Edge on his show. Check it out on his YouTube channel, Philip Ittner, 1 L in Philip, 2 T's in Ittner, just as it's written on the screen. Please subscribe to the channel, and please share the show when you
want to grow that audience. 2025 is going to be it's going to be a difficult year, and so I'm hoping that I can get my message out to a much larger audience, and so that's what we're aiming at, is to get out this year more than ever, because this year might be the most important year of the war, because I'm with Zelensky. I do think that there is a way that this war ends in 2025, but it has to end with justice, and it has to end the right way. You can't not just any peace. It's got to be a lasting and just peace.
Agreed.
So this is a year where we need to be really loud, and we need to get our message out there. And people aren't doing it. They're sending Russia's message. Ukraine's message is not getting played in the English speaking world. So that's what we're here for.
Boston Brian is asking you to check your DMs. I don't know where, but someplace, wherever, because he wants to have you on. We're all about broadening that audience. I hope at some point you're too big for my little channel. That's my goal. So
never,
for real. So much love, brother. Be safe, and we will talk again on Saturday.
Of course,
all right,
as safe as I can. But yeah.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. Please do check out the channel today, because I am putting something up, and I'll talk to you on Saturday.
Excellent.
All the best to everybody.
Thanks. Be safe. Okay. There goes, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. There goes Philip Ittner. Obviously, a lot of stuff, too much to even cover. So that's why it's good that he's going to be on with us on Saturday as well. That I'm shocked at how much coverage this Damak property connection is getting. It's so weird. Hold on. That it's so on the fucking nose. Like, it's not, honestly, is Sparks Goldthwait 2028. I don't want to be second banana in this. I'm not going to be second banana in the house, Sparks. It's stunning to me that the immediate response of everybody in that room when they knew who he was going to announce didn't go, do you have any concern about Damak Properties connections to, Russians who are getting money out of the country and have been stealing from, you got officials in the government who own Damak property in Dubai, and they make $100,000 a year allegedly, but they're buying $7 to $20 million properties in Dubai. Does that have any concern for you, being in business with Mr. Hussein here, or Mr. Sajwani, right? Or can he speak to it? Is everybody's money green equally? Is that going to be the standard? It doesn't matter who you are. So at a certain point, if the cartels wanted to invest through their subsidiaries billions of dollars in the United States, you would be down with that, and you would clear the way for a fentanyl factory? Whew. So, good Lord. Living in Manhattan, never called. Meanwhile, my 48-year-old boss, vaccine denier, is dead. So there I am at 71. Oh my gosh, Susan. Well, we don't wish ill on anybody, but there you go. But we want to call water a different name and buy Icy Island. All right. If you get rich, do you have to act that way? Is it a rule? No, it's not. Go look up the dude who got the Baskin Robbins fortune. You don't hear about the billionaires and millionaires who aren't pricks. You just don't. Doesn't work. All right, I got to go. I'll see you guys later on this afternoon. Take care of yourselves and take care of somebody else. And, let me throw the chat in here real quick. Because we got to, I got to let you guys know that I appreciate you. And Arizona Sunflowers, thank you for the super chat. And it said, I love today's show. The Major Philip and you, Hal, made me forget about Trump's depressing, inane speech yesterday almost. I don't know how we get through this presidency without all you guys. Yes, I really hope you can run in 2029. I'll run in 2028 and serve in 2029. Either way, I will be of service to my fellow Americans going forward, period. Just get used to the idea. All right, much love, and I will see you guys later. Oh, my, hold on, my music isn't playing.